So we got an FJ Cruiser. We're going to be putting on a Metaltech Stronghold Winch Mount bumper. It's a center support that's going to go into the very middle of the stock bumper. We're going to cut the bumper on the inside edges, and our winch mount of the Stronghold is going to go right in the middle. Stronghold's going to have a nice winch in there, and we're going to have an option of putting a 30-inch light bar on top of it. One thing you may notice about the specific truck we're using is the front bumper is missing the center grille here, and also the inner crash bar is actually not in there as well. This truck was actually involved in a front end collision. They repaired the front end on it and they put the factory skin back on, but the customer opted, he wanted to get one of our Strongholds in place of putting the crash bar and all this stuff back together again. So we're going to start off by removing the front grille, and we're going to remove it by removing these two 10mm head bolts, or the little screws, and then there's push clips that are in here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the push clips, and you remove the push clips by pulling up on the center of it. And once that center part's pulled up, they come right out. Once those fasteners are removed, there's clips here, and also one in the middle. And the way they come loose is they actually just give them a little tug and they pop right out. Comes right off. Okay, so now we're going to be removing the center part plastic. And to remove the center part plastic, there's going to be push clips across the top and the middle. And then there's going to be screws that are in the wheel wells that are going in and holding it in place. Also underneath at the bottom of the plastic, there's going to be a couple of bolts typically holding the plastic to the inner liner of the wheel wells. So we're going to pull those push clips right now. To pull the bumper off, at this point, it's just all held on with a bunch of clips, kind of like a Tupperware lid. So you just got to grab it by the side and just give it a little pop and it starts to come right off. I'll release this one. That one's released. And now I can actually just take the bumper right off. Once you pull the bumper off, be very careful how you set it down. The plastic actually scratches really easily. So we'll a lot of times have like a moving blanket or something to set it on, so we're not scratching it while we're handling it. And then because we're going to be cutting the center section out, and we don't want to scratch up the outside of the bumper while we're doing that. So once the front bumper's off, you're going to have a crash bar that's here, and you're going to have 4 nuts on either side that you're going to go ahead and release and pull them off. They're a 14mm hex head nut. Next, we're going to drill out the side holes that are directly behind the mounting flange. They have a 6mm threaded nut in them, and we're going to drill them out with a 1/2-inch drill. We're just going to go right through the nut, nice and clean. And then when we're done, we're going to come in and cold chisel out any extra swarf that was on there. Okay, for extra range of area to move, we're going to take this cross support off. All this support does is it allows, it's a lip that the plastic sits on of the bumper. And that's really it, that's all it does. So there's a 10mm head, there's 3 10mm head screws. There's one in the center and one on either side in the front that we're going to pull in. Now the screws are off, we're able to go ahead and pull this piece off and it comes right off. So at this point, everything's off and we're ready to go ahead and slide the winch mount on and get it bolted in place. And then we'll go ahead and put the side supports on, get those bolted in place, then we'll be ready to install our winch. It goes on like that. And at this point, I can use the factory supports that it comes with, that's already on comes with the truck. Those are going to go on, and we're going to go ahead and tighten those down. This is the support bracket, and it's going to go in here. This top hole is going to go through there, and this bottom hole down here is going to go right through that 12mm existing hole right in the frame. Now, because of the way the frame is shaped, we can, a lot of times we need a little spacer that we put right here on top to help with the pinch weld on the frame. But not every frame needs it. So these are, if you need it, use it, but if you don't need to use it, don't use it. So at this point, I can go ahead and I can put a bolt through here just to hold things in place. I'm going to take my metric 12mm, 40mm long bolt, and I'm going to put that in down here at the base and get that started right there. And this hole is just along for the ride. It's not going to have anything in it. And this is now in place. I can go ahead and reach through the front of the frame. And prior to doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put the 3/8" bolts in from the front of the frame here and they're gonna go back to the backside. Take the nut, put it on my finger, press it into the pad of my finger so I have control of the nut. And I'm gonna put it through the hole and smash it against the wall. Back the bolt out. Done. Ready to tighten stuff up. Okay, so this customer has opted for a Warren Evo. So we have a Evo 10S, so a 10,000 pound synthetic line winch. So great winches for the money. Now we're going to have to remote mount the solenoid. So the solenoid is going to be coming off the winch itself, and we'll be building an extension with some cabling to put the solenoid further back under the hood of the truck. So we've remote mounted our solenoid for this winch installation, and on the FJ Cruisers, right in front of the brake reservoir is a great spot to mount the solenoid. So I just made a little bracket, it's bolted to the wall, and then all of our lines have been remote mounted to it. Now, when we pop the hood, we can very easily remove the cover here, tap into our lead to control the winch. But otherwise, the whole time that we're driving around, this is under the hood, nice and warm. It's not going to get full of water, and it's super protected. The remote mounting was just rewiring, extending the wires to the controller, and we have a separate video on that that'll be in the description. So when you put the nuts of the winch in, every winch uses these square nuts, and they go in these little cast pockets that go in there, and you line it up, and your bolt comes in from below, and that's how it works. It bolts right in there. Well, one of the challenges sometimes is that when you're installing a winch, you sometimes have to rock it back and forth. And so when I rock this winch, it's just going to fall right out. And so it's like, well, how do you keep that from happening? Well, you can do a little installer trick. So let me go ahead and pull this back out. Is to just go ahead and get a little bit of grease. In this case, I'm using some red lithium, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it on the nut. And what I'm going to do is I'm making the nut where it doesn't want to slide out once I put it in. The grease is actually going to hold it in there. And the grease is not going to hurt anything. And I'll align them with a screwdriver before I put the winch into its home, where I'm going to then put the bolts in for permanently mounting this thing. But the trick is just to use grease to help hold the nut in place. It's not going to hurt anything. Grease on the threads is fine. It will change your torque settings, because they will have to be a wet torque if you're using a torque chart. And like all hardware, if you're not sure what the torque settings are, it is not proprietary information. Torque settings are a public standardization. They're online. Just look up the torque setting. All right, so the nuts are greased. I'm going to use a Phillips screwdriver to center my nuts, make sure those are centered, so when I go to fish the bolts in, I'm not having to fight getting those moved around. So winch is in place. We've made sure that the dryer line is moving for the air conditioning system. You can bend this with your hand really easy. It's very easy to bend. Don't use a tool because you'll actually crimp it, but just make it big enough so your hand can get in here and operate the winch, and we're good. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put the cross support brace back on again, and because it no longer needs to be off. And it's just those same 3 little bolts that we removed earlier are just going to go back in again. Okay, so now we're going to cut the plastic. And the center section, you'll have a silver piece that just snaps on this. Just pop that silver piece off. This bumper is all one piece all the way across. And we're going to be cutting on the inside edges of both sides. And the easiest way to see that is if I use this white marker. You can see the cut area that we're going to do is right through there. And we're going to do that on both sides. That's going to be our cut lines that we're doing. So now to cut it, there's a couple different ways you can do it. One, you can use a box knife and just be very careful as you score repeatedly along the lines of the plastic. It is just plastic, it's going to cut. You can use a small Dremel tool with a cutoff wheel on it. I'm going to use a cordless 4.5-inch grinder. It's going to cut it like butter and really quick. Just remember that you're going to be cutting plastic, so it's going to be molten balls of plastic flying out. So definitely safety glasses and definitely gloves. So I'm going to be wearing gloves, safety glasses, and I'm going to cut this right now so we can get it on the truck. So we got the inside cuts now. We got kind of molten balls of plastic all over the place here. I'm going to come in with a box knife, and I'm just going to be very careful as I come along here, and I'm going to trim that away to clean up the edge to get it ready to go back on the truck. Okay, now we're going to put the bumper shell back on again, and we're going to bring it up, and it just slides right back into place on the truck now. So now with it in place, I'm going to go ahead and start putting the push pins back in and locking this bumper back into its clips. So now we're going to take the grill and put it back on the truck, and it just lines up on its same clip spots and push pin points, and we're going to snap it into its primary spots. And now I can put the push pins back in and the screws back in.